Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Dark Souls 3. I played it on the PS4. It's also available on the Xbox One and PC. Now, I've never found much story in any of the Dark Souls games. I'm well aware that there is story, but you gotta go digging for it, really. And, well, I'd rather play the game than spend my time digging through the inventory, reading all the items, blah, 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 just to figure out the story. The only real story bit that I got from Dark Souls 3 is that your goal is to destroy the Lords of Cinder, and, well, that's going to be tough because it's a Dark Souls game. Now, as far as the audio goes, I really wish there was a lot more music in this game. Most of the zones have zero music whatsoever, like nothing. There's sometimes not even really any ambient noise, and that gets a little weird at times. There is some music during boss fights as well as in certain zones, but most zones don't have any music and sometimes no ambient noise, which I'm not going to say is unnerving, but it's unrealistic. And yes, I get it's a video game, but you're in these zones that have like 100+ monsters roaming around and there's no noise whatsoever. You're in like a forest and there's no like little creatures in the trees making noises or anything. But the voice acting work in this game was pretty damn good. There was definitely some overacting in places, but hey, this is Dark Souls. Most of it was really good. As for the rest of the sounds, the audio matched up well. The monsters sounded monstrous, the swords sounded good. When you slam your sword into the ground, it makes a great thud. Well, not thud, but a great sound that fits very well. The clubs do make a great thud, though. Apart from the lack of music, I don't have any major complaints with the sound. Now, as for the gameplay mechanics, Dark Souls 3 is an action RPG, just tough as hell. I will say, I find that Dark Souls 3 lacks some polish in the gameplay side, as well as the control mechanics, but I'll get onto that later. What I mean in the lack of polish in gameplay is specifically to the enemies. The attack arches, the hitbox for their attacks is really, really weird. And by weird, I mean broken for some of the monsters. They'll do attacks that shouldn't hit you if you're behind them, and yet somehow you get hit by them. Or they'll swing, and it should hit you, and it won't. But at times when it shouldn't hit you, it does. Now, obviously, when it should hit you and doesn't, that's great because, well, you didn't take any damage. But the other times when you shouldn't get hit and do, well, that really sucks because, well, it could lead to your death very easily in a game like this. I'd rather it work correctly either way. I'd rather get hit when I'm supposed to get hit and not get hit when I'm not supposed to get hit. One thing about Dark Souls 3 is I think the overall experience is pretty well guided. You do get to a zone eventually where you can take more branching paths, but for the most part, it's pretty linear at first, which I think is good because Dark Souls 2 did not do that, and you could wind up veering into a zone you shouldn't be, get stuck there, and just kind of be fucked. Whereas Dark Souls 3, like I said, does a pretty good job of keeping you in the zone you're supposed to be in when you're supposed to be there. Eventually, yeah, you can go into harder zones accidentally, but for the most part, I think it's a pretty well-guided experience. And of course, I love in Dark Souls 3 the fact that they keep the massive enemy bosses. I mean, just fucking huge guys. Those battles, they're still there. Some of them not always huge, some of them smaller guys, and they're going to be really tough. Some of them gigantic, might even be easier. It's just kind of hard to know. But huge bosses is always cool. Even some of the mini bosses can be massive. I stumbled upon this demon who wasn't even a full boss. He was just a mini boss, and he was like 5 times my size. It was pretty damn cool. Now, unfortunately, the controls, like I said earlier, is another place where Dark Souls 3 seems to lack polish. For me, I would try and dodge back into the right, and for whatever reason, I would dodge back into the left, and I would die because of that. Also, for whatever reason, I would successfully block an attack with my shield, and then I'd press the attack button, and my character wouldn't attack. I'd have to press it a second time, for no other reason. And it was really inconsistent when that would happen, so it got pretty damn frustrating. Dark Souls 3 controls work pretty well for the most part, but the problem is, in a game like Dark Souls 3, for the most part, isn't good enough. Okay, so graphically, this is a beautiful game. I mean, just absolutely gorgeous game, some great environment. The characters have a lot of detail in them. The weapons look amazing. Just, it's a great looking game. One of my biggest complaints with the game is the co-op system. Admittedly, none of the games by FromSoftware have had amazing co-op systems, or at least none of the ones I've played, but this one seems especially broken. I'd put down my mark so my buddy could bring me into his world, or he'd do it, so I could bring him into mine, and then it just wouldn't work. I mean, 15 plus minutes would go by, and the emblem wouldn't show up for him to summon me, or vice versa. When it works, it's really fun to have somebody else to play with, but when it doesn't work, it's pretty much more infuriating than getting your ass handed to you repeatedly throughout the game. At the end of the day, if you're a Dark Souls fan, well, you're probably already playing Dark Souls 3. But if you're not a fan, I would definitely recommend picking this game up if you're not afraid of a challenge. So in the comments below, why don't you tell me, when you pick up a new game, do you put it on the hardest difficulty immediately? Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.